Today Atlas is going to be working on his hind legs, so I'm just asking him to lift his hind leg here. I'm going to hold it for a couple seconds. I think I'm doing about 5 seconds here where I'm just trying to have him hold it up. It's like 4 or 5 seconds. But I've started with just holding it up for 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and then I make sure he's being consistent with that. And so I'll ask for the foot to come up for 1 second. If he can do that 3 times quite nicely, then we'll move on to 2 seconds and then move on from there. If it's like sometimes he can hold for 1 second, like 2 of the times or 1 at a time, I'm going to work on it a little bit more and maybe do 5 repetitions where he can do it. Definitely for 5, like if he's doing it every single time, I'm like, okay, he knows it and we can add some duration to that. So, but that's where we're at with the hind feet, because I hadn't really done a video with the hind feet recently. So he's resting it nicely too. That was also another key, is I go ahead and touch his hind leg. I kind of mix up some desensitizing in here too, so he's not always thinking about lifting it. I'm doing some desensitizing with his tail as well, and I'll click him for that because he's being really nice and staying relaxed. But I want to make sure that he's okay with my hands touching his hind legs and then him just resting his hind toe up on the ground and then lifting it. But I'm also doing some desensitizing with me going around behind him. So I like to break it down and just stay pretty far away from him and make sure I have plenty of space so he can just get used to me going around. And then I can start not necessarily like closing the distance, because I don't want to move behind him in kicking distance, but I'm just going to start preparing him a little bit more for me to go directly behind him. But I'm just going to start same thing. This one, he decided he wanted to pick it up quickly and kind of do this pulling situation, so I shouldn't have grabbed onto his leg to begin with. When he went to pull it up, I should have just kept my hand on it and rubbed him, and then when he put it down and relaxed, I should have taken it away and then tried again. Because since he was already in that like lifting sort of state, I shouldn't have rewarded that. So again, with this one, like he wasn't kicking around, but he was lifting it up before I asked, and I really want to train that relaxation into it from the beginning. So that's just something important there. He held it up for about 3 seconds. That looks good. But make sure that they're okay with you touching and they keep their hand still. And then once you ask them, they'll kind of rest on their toe. And then once you ask for them to lift their foot, then they lift it up completely. So my cues for that now are I go back there, I rub his leg, I'll just kind of lay my hand kind of on his hock, and then he'll rest his toe, and then I'll say foot, and I'll squeeze my hand a little bit lower down on his cannon bone, and he'll pick it up. So then he's got separate cues for the different things that I'd like. And I train that all in progressive steps anyway. So I'm just sensitizing to the same thing, me going around behind him, just going the other way. But back to the feet, I do all those steps. So like I start off with just desensitizing the hind legs to my touch of my hands. So that's step 1, then lifting the foot, resting it on the toe, and then lifting it. And so those all have separate cues. So I'm going to work with the surcingle a little bit more. So I have him in protected contact. He's on the other side of the fence. I'm going to just let him target the surcingle, and then I go ahead and touch him on the withers with it, and he is a lot less reactive to it. He's done so much better. He's made a bunch of progress with it. So now I really don't have to have him touch it with his face and touching him on the neck and all that. I can just go from he's okay with it, he touches it with his nose, and then I can just go ahead and kind of put it up over his back and on his withers. So that's important that he's making nice and progress. So he was a little tense there, so I was like, nope, we're just gonna take it off and move away, and I'm gonna put him back into position, and he's trying to target it with his nose. I don't think he's necessarily worried about it. If he's just like, I need to target it, sometimes that can be worry. I think he got a little frustrated, and I was like, no, we're not doing that. So he was just a little frustrated there. He was like, I want to touch it and target it, and just got a little frustrated there. And I just was kind of put a little bit of pressure on him, and then I just asked him again. So I didn't chase him around or do anything. I was just like, nope, that's not what we're doing, and we'll go ahead and do that. And obviously, like watching this back, I don't want to have that happen. I want him to be set up so that he doesn't get frustrated like that. But if, sometimes you miss the steps and not everything's perfect, this is kind of how I handle it. But ideally, I want to make sure, like, okay, is he showing me any signs of tension when he's trying to target, or is he just confused, and that's what he thinks he's supposed to be doing. So I should have just slowed it down and just kind of maybe taken the surcingle away, asked him to just kind of side pass, let him stand for a second, and then start again. So, but he's moved on quite nicely. He's just standing still, being pretty relaxed, and he'll let me lay the surcingle over him, and it's just folded in half right now, so it's not its full length. And then I'll go ahead and unfurl it, and he's also getting used to it being on him and being like above him on that top rail, and he can see it's connected to the panel, so that could be kind of scary. But it also kind of mimics like me coming from the fence or mounting block to his back, so that's important for him to kind of see. And I want it to fall on the ground, so that first time he was like, oh gosh, that's scary. But I want him to get used to the saddle falls on the ground, maybe I fall on the ground, like the surcingle falls, the saddle pad falls off. I want that to just be like, oh, sometimes things fall off of me. It's not a big deal, because I don't want it to be if I'm riding and something happens and I fall off and he just is terrified, because that never happens, or it doesn't happen a lot. So like the second time here, that looks so much better. That looks fantastic. He was just like, oh, okay. If you just train it in, then it's like a normal part of your horse's routine. And he's like, yeah, sometimes things fall off of me. Like, it's fine. So that's important when you're first saddle training, or maybe if you're restarting, just kind of make stuff falling on the ground part of it. So it falls down, and I just click when it hits the ground. And you can practice like stuff falling faster, stuff making more noise. Like this time it fell a bit slower. So that's just kind of just play with it and see how it goes, and make sure that that's something your horse is exposed to, though, because then it just makes the whole situation more frustrating when you're riding and then you have this situation where you fall off, or some, the saddle falls or something, and you have to fix it. So now I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, and you've seen all the previous videos where he is getting used to the surcingle and stages, and we've done all the steps. So this is just another one of the steps that I do with the surcingle, just to build up to the saddle. And I know there's a lot of it, and it's kind of probably boring. I'm trying to break it down and make it as short as possible, but this is kind of like a diary format, so it's, if you need to fast forward and kind of get an idea of it, that's fine. But I'm going to just kind of show what I think is necessary, and try not to be too repetitive. But it is important to kind of see his reaction to it both sides, and that's why I've left it in here, because it should be the same. Like, so he changed sides and he is the same on this side. If your horse is not the same on the other side, then we need to fix that hole, because we don't want to just train an exercise on one side and just assume that he's going to know it on the other side. So we need to make sure he's totally confident with having the surcingle over his back, hanging down. Like, it's windy today, it's kind of blown around. This looks excellent. Now he can kind of walk around after he wasn't spooked at all by that surcingle falling on the ground from this right side. So that looks great. I'm just having him follow a hand target and letting it blow around, have him turn around and just kind of do some movement with it, and then I'll go ahead and take it off. That looked excellent. The surcingle is just so valuable as a training tool. Like, I can get him used to so many things with it. It's really nice. But now I'm going to work on a little bit of girthing. So I'm going to use my target/crop to help me out here. And it's just so much easier and safer to do this in protective contact. Since I've started the Mustangs with it, I've started another horse with it, and I just really like it. So ask him to side pass over. He is not listening, as you can tell. He's being slow, so I should be like, okay, I'm going to reset him up and try again, because he's not listening. So we have an issue there. There we go. So I set him up. I brought him forward from my hand target and asked him again. So I shouldn't have kept asking those couple times, because now I'm kind of breaking down the behavior a little bit. I'm asking and nothing's happening. He's not getting rewarded, but I shouldn't have to ask and nothing happens. So that first time I should have moved him forward, and then tried to break down the behavior so that he is like, oh, this is what we're doing again. So I'm just using my crop to reach the girth under his belly. I'm just gonna try to stay as far away as possible, and I'm letting that kind of fling around, touch his belly. We did that in the previous video where I'd pull it just kind of touches him, and I clicked for those things. Now I'm kind of just connecting to the two together. I'm not putting it through the buckle. I'm just holding them together and then clicking and releasing. So I do all the little baby steps that you see in the middle here. But I should have probably had a little bit longer crop. Now I'm going to run it through and hold it for a second and click and take it off. But all those steps are really important. So like the first one where it's just the girth was flowing under his belly, it kind of touched him on there, and then I kind of held the two ends of the surcingle together so it's a little bit tight and then let go, and now I'm just kind of pulling it through the buckle and holding it and then letting go, and then I'll start putting it on the buckles and then taking it off immediately, and then it can get tighter from there, and then he can start walking with it while he's girthed. So and you'll see a bit more of that once he gets into the faster gaits, and we'll move to the around the round pen, which works well for that because it's kind of hard in this position, but I wanted a bit bigger barrier versus I just have like a rope for my around the round pen. So it's a little bit safer, so I had to adjust it here. I think it was set on Caster's size or somebody else's size, so I had to fix it because he's pretty little. And he moved over inside past well, so he's remembering that. And so he wanted to move her a little bit there, so kind of just keep notes of when he's paying attention to things. That one was a little bit too far back. I want to get it a bit closer. There we go. And just let it touch him, and just I'm just messing around with, okay, he's okay with me reaching underneath. He's okay with me using the crop to grab it, and he can see it kind of swinging out of that right eye. So like there it swung away and he can see that, and he's fine with that. Like his top line looks really nice. He continues to chew throughout the whole time, and really like I'm kind of struggling here, but that's fine. Like if you can't get it on the first time or the first few times, don't worry about it because you're working on some nice desensitizing. So not bad at all. Then I slid it up onto the buckles there till it was kind of tight, and then I clicked and then let go. He's not at the point where I'm going to start tightening it quite yet and clicking while it stays. I'm just getting him used to like the idea that once it's tight, that's what you're getting rewarded for. And I love his body language right here. He looks so relaxed, and that looks super great. This is exactly what I want at this point, and really throughout my training. I know it doesn't always happen. Now I'm adding a little bit of time there, and whoop, it fell off. And he jumped a little bit, but it was on the other side, and then he kind of came right back to me, and then he was like, oh my goodness, now it's underneath him, and that's important too. So it's like now I'm just gonna use this chance to see if he'll kind of cross over it, and he doesn't like it being behind him, so I'm just gonna be like, hey, let's go over it. Maybe let's make it into a little ground pole, and because he doesn't really like going over those, and kind of build his confidence with that. Like he doesn't want to just stop there, he wants to turn because he doesn't like it right behind him. But all these little things are really important. I'm not in a big hurry to just get it on him and tighten the surcingle and make it into a girth and like let him buck it out. I don't want any of that. I want him to build confidence and use this just as a whole learning experience. So I don't necessarily always do this. Like I didn't set it up to be like, hey, let's make this surcingle into a ground pole. It just kind of worked out that way. And then we get to work on something else and some new obstacle. So that looks really great. Like this time was the first time where he stood there and allowed the surcingle to be right behind him. So he's building up that confidence. Because I had pulled it off of him, but he hadn't seen it fall off on the other side. So he was only seeing it fall off on the side I was on. So I should have put like a rope on it, like on the girth part, and pulled it from the side that I'm not on and had him seen that. So that's just another thing to do some prep on. And you might not have to do that at all. Like Atlas is a pretty sensitive Mustang. The majority of my horses are not nearly that sensitive. So it's not necessarily that you can skip steps, it's that you don't need as many steps. But if you see a hole, break it down, fix it, and you might have to go back multiple steps and build up their confidence. But it's an important thing to do. So again, he's stopped and he let the surcingle be behind him. He's not as confident going this direction. He's still wanting to sniff it. He's still a little bit worried about it. That looks so much better. So it took him a few times, but he got it. So we just kind of worked at it. No big deal. He's following the target. He likes doing that. He knows how to do that. So that looks really nice. I'm really happy with that he actually let me do that. So I'll just grab it. And that's scary too. Oh my goodness, something's dragging on the ground. So we got to work on that too, but we'll do that at a different time. So go kind of back to our surcingle lesson here. And I just kind of cut out where I had to dust it off because it was a little gross, but I'm going to toss it back on there. And again, especially with the surcingle, it's much easier. I can practice girthing from this side and I can practice from the right side. I do it on my English saddle. I will girth from both sides. So it's just important to just you know, again, like I was saying before, make sure they know both, like all lessons on both sides. So pull up, I'm gonna hold for a couple seconds, click, let go. So this looks really great. And he went right back to that relaxed body language, like super awesome here. I'll let it kind of fall down and cling. That looks great. I think he was okay with it being on the fence panel and maybe a bit more worried when it was on the ground, but so we have more things to work on, but overall we're progressing in the right direction, and just like hanging it up on the fence too so he can see it in a different point of view.